Hey guys, tonight we're stepping onto the dew-dampened training field, high on a misty hill where the air smells of pine needles and earth so fresh it still glistens with last night's rain. You hear the distant chant of temple monks echoing across the valley, and behind you, the low roll of a lone taiko drum tapping a slow, deliberate heartbeat. But before you draw your sword or tighten your armor, you probably won't survive this without first mastering the ancient rituals that steal the warrior's mind and absolve the spirit. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know down below where you're listening from and what time it is. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge up the narrow stone steps carved into the hillside towards a small Shinto shrine perched above the training yard. The air feels cooler here, tinged with incense and moss. As you approach, you see a line of samurai kneeling before a stone basin filled with crystal clear water. Their lacquered armor gleams even in the gray dawn light. This is Misogi, the purification rite that cleanses both body and spirit, a mainstream practice every samurai performed before any martial activity. One samurai steps forward, his face calm and composed. With deliberate precision, he cups his hands, dips them into the icy water, and brings them to his face, letting the chill snap him alert. He repeats this motion, each splash a vow of purity, not just of flesh, but of intention. The legend goes that some warriors seeking humor on feast days slyly replaced half the basin water with sake to take the chill off, but temple records imply such pranks were rare and swiftly admonished. Historians still argue whether this festive misogi was a tolerated quirk or simply whispered rumor in the corridors of power. Once the cleansing is complete, the samurai rise in silent unison. They gather white ceramic bowls of purification salt, another layer of spiritual cleansing. Salt and everyday seasoning also served as a barrier against malevolent forces. They sprinkle it carefully around their feet, marking the sacred ground. I'll never forget seeing one particularly mischievous retainer toss a handful over his own shoulder, grinning only to be met with his lord's raised eyebrow. Historians still debate how widespread such light-hearted breaches were, but convent cookbooks and shrine registries both record occasional salt shortages attributed to overzealous page boys. The shrine's wooden torii gate casts long shadows as the rising sun peeks behind mist-wrapped pines. Now the samurai in their unadorned cotton underarmor and polished kabuto helmets tucked under their arms bow deeply to the shrine, as if bowing to the dawn itself. They clench their hands in prayer, calling on Amaterasu Omakami, the sun goddess, and Ujigami, the local protective deities. Kami of this mountain, and of the ancestral blade, I beseech your favor, they murmur. Their voices rise in a quiet litany that blends Shinto reverence with Bushidō honor. A solitary chant drifts through the mist. Konochi no kami, yobokura o mamore. Spirits of this land, protect us. The cadence is more than a prayer. It's the heartbeat of a warrior culture that sees every battle as both an earthly conflict and a cosmic struggle. Without this sacred invocation, Graves of Hanoji tells us even the most skilled swordsman risked losing his nerve in the clash of steel. You stand at the edge of the courtyard, toes sinking into the soft, dew soaked grass, and watch as the samurai turn toward the practice field. Each man clasps the sash of his haka, comma, the pleats straight, the folds crisp, a reminder that discipline is woven into every movement. They raise their eyes to the rising sun and feel its warmth on their faces, forging a silent pact to fight not for glory alone, but for the code that has shaped generations. Next comes the donning of armor, another ritual of purification and empowerment. Each piece is carefully inspected, steel plates polished to mirror shine, leather straps conditioned with camellia oil, silk cords replaced if frayed. A mismatched knot could cost a life, so the ceremony is meticulous. Some samurai added a fringe of silver scale at the collar, or attached a tiny omamori talisman to their sewed sleeves for extra protection, a practice debated by scholars as either essential superstition or mere decoration. As each warrior straps on his do cuirass, the clang of metal on metal echoes in the stillness, reminding you that armor is more than defense. It's a statement of intent and solidarity. Placing the kabuto on his head, the samurai lifts the shikoro neck guard so it settles just right. The crest on its front is a clan emblem, but fringe accounts suggest a few lords secretly added miniature bells beneath the jingasa brim, so their arrival in camp would alert attendants. Though most agree, this was swiftly outlawed as undignified. Finally, the samurai faced the torii once more, each lifting his hand to brush the peaks of his helmet. This final blessing is a personal moment, a whispered vow to uphold honor, to strike true, and if fate demands the willingness to face death without regret. Historians still argue whether such helmet blessings originated in early Heian court rituals or in frontier defenses, but church records from Jesuit visitors marvel at the solemnity. As you step back, the sun fully cresting the mountaintop, you sense the transformation these men have moved from disciplined retainers to sanctified warriors. Their souls are cleansed, their bodies sanctified, and their hearts resolved. In the hush of dawn, before the first clash of wooden bakken or the harsh scrape of iron, they stand united in ritual, ready to face the world with steel and spirit. You step away from the Torii's solemn gateway and follow the line of samurai into the open pavilion where their yoroi armor rests on wooden stands. The early sun filters through the bamboo slats, illuminating each lacquered lamella and silk-noted hinge. But here, amid the soft tap of wooden mallets against steel, another sacred routine begins. Because now it is time for armor oiling and helmet blessings. For every samurai armor was more than protective wear. It was an extension of self, a second skin that carried both practical and spiritual weight. Mainstream chronicles confirm that samurai routinely applied camellia oil to their lamellar plates, both to preserve the metal and to produce a gentle sheen that discouraged rust. But treatises mention that some elite warriors added fragrant sandalwood oil, believing its scent summoned ancestral spirits. A fringe detail historians still debate, wondering whether sandalwood was ever practical outside mythic descriptions. You see one samurai pour a small lacquered bowl of clear camellia oil into his palm. The oil glides over each metal edge, invisibly filling microscopic cracks. As he works, his breath is slow and deliberate in rhythm with the oiling strokes. The act is prayerful. As he polishes, he murmurs, "May this armor guard my flesh as my heart guards my honor." Scholars still argue whether this muttered blessing was standardized or purely personal devotion. Beside him, another warrior uses a soft cloth to buff his kabuto helmet. Its Maydate crest, a stylized dragon, catches the light, and he pauses to trace its curves with a forefinger. Tradition held that polishing the crest renewed its protective power, integrating the helmet with local Shinto deities. Some scrolls even claim certain crests were consecrated in private rites by shrine priests, though cynics question if these ceremonies ever occurred or were later romantic additions in Edo period retellings. Once the plating is gleaming, each samurai dons his armor with reverent care. Straps tighten, cords wrap in precise knots, and the hydate thigh guards click softly into place. When a seasoned warrior helps a novice with the final buckle, it's both practical instruction and a rite of passage, affirming the novice as a true bearer of the clan's martial legacy. Now comes the helmet blessing. Each man raises his helmet to the shrine's small kami statue, an ancient Inari fox spirit said to grant stealth and courage. He touches the iron brim to his forehead, then lightly taps it on the wooden shrine rail. This rhythmic tapping echoes like a warrior's heartbeat, a bridge between the material armor and the spiritual protection sought. A whispered Inari-sama, lend me your swiftness, follows. Historians still argue whether tapping the helmet was a universal rite or a localized tradition. In certain provinces, some diaries mention only chestplate prayers. The final touch is the chin cord, a silky rope threaded through small holes on either side of the kabuto. As the samurai secures the knot beneath his chin, he touches the cord 3 times, invoking the trinity of victory, skill, honor, and fate. A well-tied cord was believed to keep the helmet in place during the fiercest blows, both a literal and spiritual anchor. Rare manuals advise using purple-dyed cord for higher-ranking officers, yet debate persists over whether purple dye was achievable in sufficient quantity before the Muromachi period. Once fully armored and blessed, each samurai stands tall, breathing in the mingled scents of oiled leather sandalwood for the bold few and morning pine. Their reflections shimmer on steel plates like ghostly guardians. No sword has been drawn yet, but already their bodies are sanctified, their hearts fortified. Because in the world of the samurai, perfect armor was more than protection. It was a living testament to discipline, reverence, and the enduring bond between warrior and spirit. After the solemn helmet blessing, the samurai file out of the armor pavilion and into the open courtyard, where long rows of gleaming katana and tachi swords rest on low wooden stands. The air is alive with the scent of oil and the soft whisper of silk cords as each warrior steps forward to tend the blade that is said to carry his very soul, because now it is time for sword polishing and kami offerings. For centuries, samurai regarded their swords not merely as weapons, but as living deities. Mainstream records from the Kamakura period describe dedicated sword polishers togishi who spent days removing microscopic scratches to evoke the blade's original spirit. You see one samurai lift his tachi by the wooden suka handle, its ornate silk wrap snug beneath his gloved hands. He places it gently on a low bench, careful not to let the polished Hammond temper line catch the light too abruptly. He picks up a small flat stone, a uwagoto surface, and adds a few drops of clear water. His methodical strokes along the blade's length produce a rhythmic swish. Each pass removes a fraction of metal, revealing a clearer mirror finish that glows in dawn's pale light. It's a mainstream fact that this two-stage process, coarse grit to shape, fine grit to shine, could take an entire day for a single sword. Yet tucked away in Edo period anecdotes is a fringe tidbit. Some masters supposedly whispered prayers into the stone before polishing, believing their words infused the blade with extra spiritual power. They recited secret incantations like Ten no Kami Kabe, no Kami Ikahodo, Mamore, gods of sky, and earth shield. This steel then inhaled over the stone to bind hope to metal. Historians still argue whether such whispered rites were actual practices or merely romantic embellishments added by later storytellers to glorify the sword's mystique. Once the blade gleams like liquid silver, the samurai moves on to oil application, a ritual equally precise. He pours a few drops of rare togi oil, a blend of camellia and powdered dragon's blood resin, a spice so costly it was usually reserved for high-ranking daimyo. Legend holds that dragon's blood oil could attract protective spirits, though many believe this was a marketing tale woven by artisan families. Scholars debate whether any genuine dragon resin ever existed in medieval Japan, or if it was simply cedar pitch mislabeled over time. With a soft cloth, he spreads the oil in long, gentle strokes, always from the base of the blade to the tip, never back and forth, mimicking the motion of an arrow released from a bow. This single direction polish prevented tiny burrs from forming and honored the blade's life-giving function to strike decisively and without regret. Now comes the kami offering. In front of a simple shrine alcove, set up at the courtyard's center, a low wooden table bears incense sake and a small bowl of salt elements of Shinto purification. The samurai kneels, setting his sword upright so the tip touches a ceremonial cushion. He lights a slender stick of ko incense, its fragrant smoke rising like a silent prayer. As it curls toward the sky, He takes a shallow cup of sake and carefully sprinkles a few drops over the blade's edge, murmuring katana no mitama yokono hani inoru. Spirit of the sword, I pray within this steel. Each drop hisses softly, a miniature crack of energy, binding spirit and steel in a pact. After sake, he lifts a pinch of salt between two fingertips and sprinkles it along the back ridge of the blade, a final barrier against impurity. Salt offerings at shrines are mainstream in Shinto ritual, symbolizing both respect and warding off evil. Yet a curious footnote: some schools reputedly used powdered white mica instead for a sparkling effect, a practice thought too ostentatious and thus suppressed by Orthodox temple records. Whether mica ever truly mingled with salt or is another contested detail remains a matter of scholarly debate. Once all offerings are made, the samurai stands, bows deeply 3 times, gentle thuds echoing across the courtyard, and steps back. His katana remains upright, a silent sentinel awaiting the day's training. These final bows are part of the standardized rei etiquette borrowed from court rituals. Yet folklore insists that certain clans performed an extra nod at the blade's reflection, an unspoken acknowledgement that the sword bore witness to the warrior's honor. Historians still debate whether this extra bow was clan specific or a widespread custom misrecorded as legend. Nearby, a novice samurai watches with wide eyes, clutching a smaller wakizashi. Later, he'll polish it under the watchful gaze of a senior mentor, hoping to learn both technique and the deep reverence behind each motion. For in the samurai's world, polishing a blade was more than maintenance. It was spiritual training, a meditation that honed the warrior's focus, humility, and respect for life and death alike. With the courtyard returning to its muted calm, incense slowly fading, and blades glinting in the growing daylight, you sense that every drop of sake and every sweep of oil has drawn the warrior closer to the blade's essence. It's more than metal. It's a living legacy forged across generations of battlefields and ceremonies, tempered by hands that treat each sword as both weapon and sacred heirloom. After the hush of sword sanctification, you're guided into a low, paper-walled chashitsu tea room set beside a mossy stone path. The air here is cool and fragrant, with steamed greens, and the faint click of bamboo slats underfoot echoes like a heartbeat. But in this serene setting, another essential ritual unfolds, because now it is time for tea ceremonies for focus. For samurai, the Chanoyu tea ceremony was far more than a polite pastime. Mainstream sources confirm that by the 16th century, many warrior clans integrated Chanoyu into their morning preparations, using the ritualized serving and sipping of matcha to sharpen concentration and cultivate calm readiness. You step onto the woven tatami mats, feeling the soft give beneath your feet, and watch as a veteran samurai kneels before a low hearth. A simple clay pot of simmering water sits atop the hearth, its gentle steam rising in lazy tendrils. He retrieves a dark wooden chasen whisk and dips it into the water, then selects a small scoop of vibrant green matcha powder from a lacquered container. With practiced grace, he sifts the powder into a rustic ceramic tea bowl, then pours the water in. His movements follow the prescribed four principles of tea harmony, while respect K purity say, and tranquility Jaku. Each gesture is measured, whisking in a precise figure eight until froth appears, wiping the scooper clean, and finally turning the bowl to a specific orientation before offering it to you. A fringe anecdote whispers that some samurai preferred blending a tiny pinch of ground gunpowder herbs with the matcha on battle mornings to heighten alertness, an intoxicating rumor first recorded in a 17th century merchant's travelogue, but swiftly denounced by tea masters. Historians still argue whether such experimental blends ever truly existed or if they're romantic fabrications, highlighting the tea ceremony's reputation for psychological rigor. As the veteran slides the bowl toward you, you draw it close, inhale the tea's vegetal aroma, and sip. The warmth spreads from your fingertips through your veins, calming the frayed edges of your mind. The bitterness hums a gentle warning against distraction, reminding you that each sip can be a meditation on the task ahead. The tender swirls of froth, a mainstream sign of skilled whisking, also indicate that the host's spirit is poised and undisturbed. Beside you, a young warrior bows, then lifts his bowl and closes his eyes, savoring the tea's sharp clarity before returning, the bowl still turned at a respectful angle. This silent exchange of hospitality is integral to the ceremony's power. Each participant briefly becomes a host. Each becomes a guest, fostering unity and shared focus. Chanoyu manuals from the era specify that no words should pass between the host and guest. Only the unspoken language of movement binds them, a practice scholars still debate as either overly rigid or a genius method of forging unbreakable concentration. The ceremony continues with delicate wagashi sweets, tiny confections shaped like autumn leaves or plum blossoms to balance the tea's bitterness. You taste one, a soft bean paste center wrapped in rice dough, its sweetness melting on your tongue. It's a mainstream detail that sweet pairing enhances tea's meditative effect by centering the senses. Yet a quirky note suggests some feudal lords sent confectioners to secret sugar plantations in Okinawa to procure finer cane sugar exclusively for tea offerings. Scholars still argue whether these plantations existed legitimately or if the rumors arose from smuggled sugar's high cost. As the final tea is savored and the bowl returned, the samurai host wipes it clean with a linen cloth, cleans the whisk, and arranges each implement on its designated bamboo rack. The elegance of this conclusion underscores the ritual's lesson. Every action, from heating water to resting a bowl, can be an exercise in mindful intent. You rise, bow deeply, and step back through the sliding doors. Outside the misty garden, welcomes you its stone lanterns and raked gravel paths, even more tranquil after the ceremony. Your mind, once scattered, now feels focused and clear as honed steel. You're ready for the day's training: sword swings, archery, horseback drills, all performed with the single pointed presence cultivated in that tea room. Because for the samurai, Chinoyu was not leisure, it was a battlefield rehearsal for the mind. In the perfect simplicity of powdered tea and silent ritual, they found the clarity and calm to face chaos without faltering. You leave the serene tea garden behind and enter a small Zen meditation hall, a low ceilinged room lined with simple wooden pillars, paper shoji windows, diffusing the morning light, and a single zafu cushion placed at the center of a meticulously swept floor. The hush here is profound, broken only by the faint rustle of breeze through bamboo outside. But in this stillness, another crucial ritual commences, because now it is time for meditative breathwork and Zen exercises. Samurai embraced Zen practices mainstream fact, adopting seated meditation, zazen, to sharpen focus and steel the heart for battle. As you step onto the hall's soft woven mat, the head instructor, a stern-faced monk in simple robes, signals you to kneel on the zafu. You settle cross-legged spine, straight hands forming the cosmic mudra over your lap. The monk rings a single wooden bell, its clear tone reverberating through the hall, marking the start of the session. The instruction is crisp. Breathe in deeply through the nose. Expand the abdomen calmly, then exhale slowly, allowing thoughts to pass like clouds. Some samurai practiced kokyuho breathing methods, honed over dozens of silent mornings, to lower heart rate and steady the mind. A fringe anecdote says certain ronin once experimented with holding their breath so long they nearly fainted, believing a near-death brush forged fearlessness. Historians still debate if these extreme exercises were widespread training or isolated legends. As you begin counting each inhalation and exhalation, your mind drifts to the steel of your blade, the weight of your armor, and then gently returns to the breath. You hear the monk's quiet admonition: if you chase thoughts, you forget yourself. If you forget yourself, you find the world. This opens scholarly debate whether Zen truly enabled battlefield valor or was more spiritual solace flickers in your mind, but here in the hush, theory gives way to experience. After 20 slow minutes, the monk transitions to kinhin walking meditation. You rise, keeping gaze lowered, and step along the hall's edge in slow, deliberate strides, matching steps to breaths. Heel to two, each footfall a prayer, each breath a link in a chain of presence. The wood floor is cool underfoot, reminding you of dewy training grounds where every step could be life or death. Then comes the standing meditation of Mokuso before battle drills. You shift to Seiza, then stand with feet shoulder width apart, hands forming the Gasho posture, eyes and half closed. You feel the weight of your armor distribute evenly, your knees soft but firm. This ritual readied samurai for sudden encounters, teaching readiness and stillness. Some texts claim elite warriors achieved instant calm by imagining their breath flowing through the blade itself, a poetic yet debated fringe notion. Finally, the monk leads a series of Yojin Kyo exercises, gentle stretches that open hips, loosen shoulders, and align the spine, preventing tension from snapping under the strain of combat. You bend forward, touch the floor, extend arms overhead. Each motion is deliberate, a flow of controlled power. A legend suggests a few masters could remain in these poses for hours, building indomitable core strength. Though modern scholars question early chronicles' accuracy on such stamina feats, as the session concludes with 3 more strikes of the wooden bell, you bow deeply to the monk and the empty hall alike. Your breath is steady, your mind clear, and your body supple. In the aftermath of silent focus and fluid movement, you feel anchored, ready to face swift katana strikes, errant arrows, and the unpredictable chaos of the battlefield. Because for the samurai, meditation wasn't retreat from conflict, it was training for it. In steady breaths, calm posture, and mindful motion, they forged the warrior's spirit, learning to meet life's fiercest moments with unwavering presence. The hush of the meditation hall fades as you step into a sunlit courtyard where a single Tadagaki scroll hangs on a wooden stand, its inked characters ancient and precise. Beyond the raked gravel and clipped pines, you hear a low murmur, samurai voices weaving words into rhythm. Here, in the quiet interplay of language and lineage, another revered ritual unfolds, because now it is time for poetry recitation and honor codes. For samurai, the art of waka poetry was more than an elegant pastime. It was a test of composure, dignity, and moral clarity. Mainstream records from the Heian and Kamakura periods show that samurai exchanged poems at dawn, matching metaphor with metal. You approach a circle of warriors seated beneath a blooming cherry tree. Each wears a simple kimono over armor. Their helmets rest nearby like silent sentinels. One veteran samurai steps forward, holding a slender sasarifu brush with measured strokes. He writes 5 lines on the scroll. Morning dew on swords, petals drift into battle. Quiet strength, revealed hearts, steeled by fleeting beauty. Duty blooms in silent fields. He finishes with a firm seal, the red ink bold against pale paper. This balanced 57577 structure is mainstream form, imparting both brevity and depth. Yet the act of recitation was also a lesson in restraint. Poetry required stillness, a calm heart, capable of seeing beauty even as war clouds gathered. Historians still argue whether early samurai adopted waka purely from courtly influence or as a strategic mind-sharpening tool. Some castle diaries credit poetry circles with averting duels born of rash anger. Now it's a young retainer's turn. Kneeling before a low table, she unfurls a blank scroll, her fingers steady. She composes bamboo shadows stretch over footprints in gray mist, paths of fate converged. One breath divides life and death. Honor guides each silent step. Her voice barely rises above a whisper as she reads the lines, her gaze lifted to the cherry blossoms drifting overhead. The assembled samurai bow quietly in appreciation, acknowledging both her poetic grace and the profound themes of fate and honor. Poetry, they believed, mirrored the warrior's path, fleeting yet delicate, yet demanding unwavering resolve. After each poem, the warrior reads aloud a line from the Bushidō code, derived from texts like Masakado Den, binding the verses to martial ethics. Today's code passage, integrity, is the root of valor. Without it, steel is but idle metal. This coupling of poetry with principle is not mere ceremony. It reinforces the samurai's identity as both artist and soldier. Fringe anecdotes whisper of clandestine midnight dueling, pacts sealed by verse, but scholars debate whether any such oaths held weight beyond romantic myth. As the circle continues, you notice subtle competitions, references to famous battles cloaked in metaphor, hints at rival clans veiled in floral imagery. Yet decorum prevails, no direct insults, no careless boasts. A master instructed that criticizing another's poem was akin to challenging his courage. Thus, generosity in praise was a martial virtue in itself. Records from Kyoto schools note that harsh critiques sometimes led to formal apologies by moonlight, though the extent of such poetic honor duels remains debated. Now each samurai sets down brush and scroll, rises and bows to the next, sealing respect and shared artistry. The final act is collective. All recite the 5 precepts of the way of the warrior in unison: courage, benevolence, respect, sincerity, loyalty, each word a vow echoing across the courtyard. This group recitation cements unity and reminds every soul that individual valor springs from communal bonds. You step back under the cherry tree petals, drifting like pale snow. The poems lay fresh on scrolls. The codes resonate in the cool air, and for a fleeting moment, art and arms merge into a single path. In these measured verses and solemn passages, the samurai found clarity that true strength arises not from steel alone, but from a disciplined heart, a cultivated mind, and an unbreakable honor. And as you leave the courtyard's gentle hush for the clang of training swords beyond you, carry with you the lesson that in the samurai world, beauty and bravery walked hand in hand, each poem a mirror reflecting the warrior's soul. You step out of the hushed poetry courtyard and into a low lantern-lit pavilion where the night air carries a gentle chill punctuated by the distant rustle of bamboo leaves. A long, low wooden table stands before you, its surface strewn with polished bamboo lots. Star charts on silk slender yarrow stalks bundled with cord, and a delicate cone of incense shaped like Mount Fuji. The scene feels both solemn and curious, as though you're about to consult the whispered will of the universe itself. Because now it is time for divination and battle forecasts. For samurai, seeking divine guidance before battle was a mainstream practice documented in war chronicles across centuries. These warriors believed that interpreting omens could tip the scales of fate, bolstering courage or cautioning against rash action. You see a veteran retainer, his face calm beneath his lacquered helmet, pick up a slender bamboo tube, the Kotsu Ura lot box. Inside lie dozens of bamboo sticks, each carved with a single kanji, representing fortune or misfortune. He shakes the box gently, the hollow rattle echoing in the pavilion's silence. Then, with a precise flick, he draws one stick. Holding it aloft, he reveals the character Jikichi, meaning good fortune. A collective sigh of relief floats through the assembled samurai, like exhaling into a cool night after holding your breath underwater. Yet in the margins of Edo period merchant diaries, there's a fringe tidbit suggesting some ambitious daimyo secretly greased the good sticks with camellia oil so they'd more easily slip into favored hands. Historians still argue whether such skullduggery really occurred or was later gossip spun by disgruntled courtiers banished to the provinces. Next, you move to a silk Hoshizu star chart pinned across a low wooden frame. The chart maps constellations, Orion the seven spears of the warring stars, and others invoked in Onmyodo astrology. A younger samurai, his breath steady, aligns a gleaming compass, a rare Ming era import, then traces the evening star's position with a lacquered pointer. He notes that Mars, the warrior's planet, is positioned directly above the emblem of his clan. That alignment was a mainstream sign of heavenly favor cited in the Onmyo Key manual used by court astrologers. Yet some Shinto priests chafed at samurai dabbling in yin and yang star lore, questioning whether such borrowed mysticism diluted pure kami reverence. Scholars still debate whether samurai truly mastered Onmyodo or simply cherry-picked its flashiest elements, sort of like attending a cooking class just for the flambe. From the star chart, your attention shifts to a neat bundle of slender yarrow stalks tied with a crimson cord. The rattle of the stalks as the retainer shakes them sounds like distant temple bells. Carefully, he selects exactly 49 stalks, no more, no less, and lays them out to cast. He performs the classic I Ching hexagram method, dividing counting and grouping stalks to form 6 lines that represent changing conditions. The result is hexagram 20, contemplation, a sign that careful observation, not brute force, will secure victory. It's a mainstream technique imported from China in the 8th century, adapted into samurai culture by later warrior scholars. Yet a curious footnote in a mid-Muromachi chronicle claims one Ronin tried using split bamboo rather than yarrow, arguing it was more sustainable, though, that innovation may have been more famine-driven than philosophical. Historians still argue whether such substitutions were creative improvisations or just scribal errors in dusty scrolls. Finally, a slender cone of KO incense shaped like Mount Fuji rests on a low ceramic stand. The senior retainer bends to light it, the sweet resinous aroma drifting upward in a single spiral. As the smoke curls, the samurai watch its patterns. A straight, unbroken plume signifies calm winds and unified morale, an auspicious omen. A swirling eddy suggests internal discord or miscommunication, warning commanders to address potential rifts. Incense omens were mainstream in monastic and court rituals, but in martial circles, they carried extra weight. They were believed to tap into subtle air currents tied to battlefield moods. Yet some tea masters scoffed, insisting that proper mindset alone was enough. Another area scholars still debate, pitting spiritual realists against Zen skeptics. As each divination method concludes, the samurai collect their tools, bamboo lots return to their lacquered boxes, star charts carefully rolled and tied, arrow stalks bundled back, incense stubs snuffed and stored. They bow deeply to the kami shrine at the pavilion's edge, an unspoken gesture of thanks and submission to forces greater than skill or steel. But even as you prepare to leave this twilight ritual, a rogue merchant's tale whispers in your mind that on the eve of a decisive battle, a certain clan's commander saw his incense cone topple. Before any smoke rose an omen interpreted as death from within. He ordered his soldiers to renew their pledges of loyalty first, a risky move that some say prevented betrayal behind enemy lines. Whether the incense truly fell by unseen hand or a servant's jostle, historians still argue whether that decision saved the clan or merely delayed its inevitable defeat. You step away from the softly flickering lanterns, the pavilion's rough-hewn beams sheltering centuries of silent counsel. The samurai file into the training yard beyond their minds, steeled by each omen. In the hush between breaths, you sense that these rites, lots, stars, yarrow, and smoke did more than forecast fate. They bound warrior and spirit, forging unity in uncertainty. Because for the samurai, divination was not mere superstition. It was a battlefield dance with destiny, a chain of rituals that linked earth and heaven, body and soul. And as you tread back along the mossy stone path, you carry the quiet power of those twilight forecasts, the knowledge that even amid swirling smoke and shifting stars, a focused heart can glimpse the threads of tomorrow. You follow the line of samurai past the divination pavilion into a narrow torchlit chamber where aged wooden beams converge overhead, and upon a raised dais stands a low altar covered in flickering candlelight. The walls bear painted panels depicting helmeted ancestors, their stern faces cast in lacquer and gold leaf. Incense coils hang in the corners, their smoke drifting upward like spectral hands. Here in this hush of reverence and memory, another solemn practice unfolds, because now it is time for ancestor veneration and family altars. For samurai, the honor of one's lineage was as sharp a weapon as any blade. Mainstream genealogical scrolls record that every warrior clan maintained a butsudan, a family altar where ancestral spirits were invoked before battle. You approach the altar as the eldest retainer, his hair silver but posture straight, kneels before a carved wooden image of the clan's founding hero. His gloved hand sets a small sprig of sakaki, sacred evergreen, into a bronze vase, its leaves symbolizing purity and continuity. He lights two slender candles, one on each side of the ancestral effigy, and uses a small shea bowl to offer anointed rice, a mainstream tribute in Shinto practice, whispering the clan invocation, Okami, no Chichi, Mamore Kono Heishi Yo, ancestor of the gods. Protect these warriors. He bows deeply, forehead touching the tatami. The murmur rises and falls, uniting living and dead in a single vow of loyalty and strength. Yet among rural militia stories, a fringe account hints that some provincial lords added a pinch of powdered jade to the rice, believing its green shimmer attracted benevolent spirits. Historians still debate whether jade was ever truly used this way, or if the tale emerged later to glorify rustic piety. Next, a junior samurai steps forward. He removes a lacquered case from his belt, opening it to reveal a small scroll printed with his family's genealogy and key battle dates. Holding it reverently, he reads aloud, "In the year of the tiger's roar, our ancestor felled 10 foes with a single blade." His voice echoes under the wooden beams, and you feel the hush settle like snow over the room. This recitation of family deeds is a mainstream rite reinforcing personal duty by recalling ancestral valor. Yet a curious footnote appears. In a 17th century chronicle, one clan reputedly appended fictitious victories to boost morale, a practice later purged from official records. Scholars still argue whether any clan's genealogies were truly embellished or simply misrecorded by inattentive scribes. On the altar's center sits a bronze mirror, its polished surface catching the flicker of candle flames. The mirror symbolizes self-reflection and the soul's clarity. The elder pours a few drops of cold spring water onto the mirror's rim, a cleansing gesture, invoking the purity that allowed ancestors to dwell peacefully in the ethereal realm. Some sects believed that if the mirror's surface broke into a spider web of cracks, it signaled disturbed spirits and impending misfortune. While mainstream shrine records mention mirror cracks during earthquakes seen as karmic omens, fringe analysts speculate whether some lords replaced cracked mirrors with flawless ones to avoid panic, even as they concealed signs of divine displeasure. Historians still debate whether mirror substitution was practical necessity or deception. After the water offering, each samurai bows twice more and murmurs a personal vow. "I walk the path your blade carved. I shall not falter." These whispered pledges are neither scripted nor uniform. Rather, they reflect each warrior's inner bond with forebears. Some clans held that uttering an ancestor's name 3 times in succession summoned spiritual aid in moments of crisis, a detail historians argue may be borrowed from esoteric Buddhist mantras. A handful of samurai then light slender incense sticks and insert them into a bed of sacred sand before the statues. Yet if the incense smoke drifted downward or flicked sideways, it was taken as a sign that the battlefield would be bloodier than expected. Tribal warlords reportedly used this omen to adjust strategy. One diary notes, that a commander canceled a dawn assault after the incense plumes snaked unnaturally toward the door. Whether that order averted disaster or merely delayed conflict is a matter scholars still dispute. Finally, the elder samurai rings a small brass bell, its clear note resonating through the chamber. The bell symbolizes the call to arms and the clarity of purpose granted by ancestral guidance. As the last vibrations fade, the samurai stand, eyes shining in candlelight, their hands resting on their sword hilts as if drawing strength from the spirits on the dais. You step back, heart buoyed by the palpable chain of memory that binds you to centuries of warriors. In this chamber, where painted visages gaze down in silent pride, each gesture rice offering, genealogy recitation, water, blessing incense, lighting, bell ringing, interweaves the living and the dead. The samurai depart in single file feet silent on the wooden floor, but hearts lifted, duty clarified, courage renewed. You step from the candlelit ancestral chamber into a broad courtyard where the clamor of wooden mallets on stone signals another grave ritual, the drilling of the most feared and revered of samurai practices. Lantern light dances across rows of vigilant warriors, each clad in polished do and kabuto, their faces set in solemn focus. In shadowed alcoves, buckets of spring water stand ready, and the sharp tang of steel drifts on the night air. Here, amid the hush of anticipation, unfolds a rite of ultimate resolve, because now it is time for seppuku drills and death contemplation. Seppuku, the ritual suicide once prescribed as the highest expression of honor, was not merely a final act, but a disciplined practice to steel a warrior's will. Mainstream military manuals from the Azuchi Momoyama period record that samurai regularly rehearsed the steps of seppuku in controlled drills, not to glorify death, but to render its prospect a known quantity. You witness a veteran samurai kneel before a low mat, his crested helmet set aside. He steadies his breath, lays his blade across the mat, and grips the hilt with deliberate care, bowing his head. A fringe anecdote preserved in a monastic diary claims some young warriors practiced the ritual on water-soaked wooden daggers dubbed Misogi, feeling the soak dampen fleshless wood until even their shouts of pain rang hollow. Historians still argue whether such extreme mimicry occurred or was later embellished to illustrate the warrior's discipline. The veteran raises the blade's edge to his stomach with a calm sweep of the arm. He murmurs the samurai's chant, Hara Kitesu, Kokoro Tsurunuke, split the belly, pierce the heart. His voice is steady, unwavering. The others witness in hushed silence, gathering courage from his composure. Then, with a motion as fluid as drawing a bow, he simulates the downward cut blade meeting flesh, a breathless moment of surrender. His face remains composed, eyes closed, as though beholding some inward vision rather than mortal violation. After a heartbeat, he leans forward and clamps his free hand over the wound, suppressing any cry. Monastic records debate whether the shouts of pain were stifled or embraced, but what's clear is that samurai drilled restraint above all. For an actual seppuku, a kaishakunin comrade would stand by sword, raised ready to deliver a swift decapitation once the cut was made an act of mercy meant to spare prolonged agony. Here the drill ends, as the veteran bows, withdraws the blade, and stands. No blood, no death. Only the etched memory of mortality, a sobering lesson in the fragility of flesh and the permanence of honor. He hands the blade to his second in command, who bows deeply and returns the razor-sharp steel to its scabbard. There is no applause, only the soft sigh of the wind through nearby pines, a reminder that life resumes even after visions of death. Next, a group of novices steps forward to practice the ritual's mental component, death contemplation. They sit in the courtyard's center, legs folded, backs straight, eyes lowered. A senior instructor recites verses on impermanence borrowed from Buddhist monks, each line evoking the transient nature of life. Petals fall without regret. The river flows, lamenting none. As each verse ends, novices lift their gaze to the moonlit sky, reflecting on the inevitability of decay. This mainstream practice, known as memento mori, hazards the heart to embrace death's certainty, forging calm in the face of chaos. Yet a curious footnote in a teen's graffiti on a courtyard wall jokes, "Next drill hugging trees until they die of old age," a fringe jest that scholars debate as youthful gallows humor rather than true record. One novice trembles, her voice breaking as she whispers, "Will my death guard my family's name?" The instructor gently places a hand on her shoulder, murmuring, "Honor lies not in death, but in how you live your blade's days." Historians still argue whether such comforting words intermingled with Stoic instruction or were later additions by compassionate scribes seeking to humanize the warriors. As the ceremony concludes, the samurai gather their swords and don their helmets once more. The courtyard's lanterns flicker their light fragile against the vast night, yet unwavering. You step bust along the stone path, heart heavy with the gravity of practiced sacrifice, mind sharpened by the Stoic lesson. Because for the samurai, rehearsing seppuku was not macabre fascination, but essential preparation to meet death with calm acceptance, to strip fear's edge from the blade of life. In that solemn drill, every warrior forged the will to stand unwavering at duty's bleakest threshold. You leave the heavy silence of the seppuku drill yard and make your way toward a sunlit pavilion at the rear of the compound, where a line of Tessin Japanese war fans rests on a low lacquered table. Each fan is crafted from hardwood ribs and iron edges, some adorned with silk tapestries displaying clan crests, others plain and utilitarian. Here in the quiet interplay of subtle signal and swift response, another essential ritual unfolds, because now it is time for war fan signals and silent commands. Samurai armies relied as much on gesture as on voice to coordinate maneuvers across the chaos of battle. Mainstream military treatises from the Sengoku period describe how Tessenjutsu masters drilled detachments to recognize and respond to a fan's tilt, snap, or flourish. You step onto the polished wooden floor of the pavilion just as a senior instructor, clad in dark crested armor, lifts a simple iron ribbed fan high above his head. In that instant, he snaps it open with a crisp snap, a universal signal for advance. The assembled warriors immediately step forward in unison, swords sheathed, but hands ready at hilts. Yet within dusty camp logs lies a fringe. Detail a cunning daimyo once commissioned a silent whispering fan covered in padded cloth, so the snap made no clack, yet still vibrated through the air, signaling covert scouts. Historians still debate whether these muffled fans ever saw battlefield use or remained courtly curiosity. Now the instructor bows, closes the fan with deliberate slowness, and raises it again, but this time tilts it leftward. The warriors pivot on their heels, forming a wedge to the left flank, is the silent command implied. Each tilt and turn of the fan mapped a tactical maneuver: right tilt for fall, back slow wave for hold formation, rapid flourish for charge. These gestures were mainstream doctrine taught in castle academies. Yet scholars note that some clans added extra flicks. A downward jab of the fan tip meant target the general, a cruel edge in psychological warfare. As you observe a young samurai practicing beside you, misreads the fan's rapid half open flick as charge lunging forward with his bakken and nearly colliding with a fellow warrior. The instructor raises an eyebrow, then quietly points to the fan's ribs. Watch the angle, not just the sound. This small correction underscores that in the din of distant blows, wind and cries, visual clarity trumped volume. Beyond the standard Tessen, you notice a row of gunbai, larger solid war fans used by commanders. These wooden fans, lacquered black and broad as small shields, serve both to signal entire battalions and, when necessary, to deflect arrows or parry blows. Mainstream sources record that famed General Sanada Yukimura wielded his gunbai in hand-to-hand combat, though some chroniclers question whether he used it as a weapon or kept it solely for signaling. The debate lingers: was the gunbai dual purpose or purely symbolic of command? The instructor now demonstrates the silent rally. He raises the gunbai high, then claps it shut sharply. No words uttered. Instantly, small squad leaders release their banners, tuck them under arms, and gather their men into tighter ranks. This method allowed units to regroup without shouting, preserving stealth on night raids. Yet peripheral scrolls hint that rival clans sometimes planted decoy fans with false signals to sow confusion, a fringe practice historians still argue about due to scant evidence in official battle reports. You step back as the instructor orders a full scale retreat rehearsal. The gunby snaps open, twice held aloft, then points backward. Drums remain silent. Samurai pivot gracefully, sheathing swords in unison, then march backward along precisely measured paces, heels first, toes dragging in soft squeaks on the wooden floor. The motion is both ceremonial and practical, training warriors to withdraw under enemy pressure without disarray. Records note that such silent retreats sometimes saved entire regiments from annihilation by feigning vacated positions while leaving behind a decoy standard. Finally, the master lowers his fan, signaling dismiss. The assembled samurai bow deeply, then file out of the pavilion, carrying fans tucked into their belts. In their hands, each fan is more than wood and iron. It is a voice without sound, a beacon in confusion, a conductor's baton wielding harmony amid chaos. You step outside into the courtyard's warm light, the soft murmur of wind through bamboo replacing the silent commands. Watching the samurai disperse, you realize that in an era before radios and field telephones, war fans were the ultimate tool of command, an artful blend of elegance and deadly precision. Because for the samurai, a fan could speak louder than a trumpet. In its folds lay the power to advance retreat flank or charge silent signals that steered the tide of battle with quiet authority. Even now, the rustle of a fan's silk reminds you that mastery of gesture can shape fate as surely as mastery of steel. The soft click of wooden shutters closes behind you as you enter the convent like calm of the Chamber of Talismans, a dimly lit alcove hung with rows of lacquered boxes, each holding delicate scrolls, paper slips, and small pouches. Incense coils cast drifting shadows on the walls, and the scent of sandalwood mingles with faint whiffs of camphor. Here, amid this hush, another silent yet potent ritual unfolds, because now it is time for protective talismans and spirit charms. For samurai, protection was as much spiritual as it was physical. Mainstream temple records recount that before every campaign, warriors obtained Ofuda paper talismans inscribed with invocations to local kami sun gods and ancestral spirits, pinning them inside armor or placing them in belt pouches. You watch as a seasoned retainer kneels before a low altar where a Shinto priest carefully writes kanji on a narrow slip of sacred washi paper with a fine brush dipped in vermilion ink. Each stroke, protection, victory, safety, carries both prayer and command. Yet a fringe anecdote persists in castle whisperings. Certain warlords, valuing secrecy, commissioned runic-style talismans carved into small iron plates that only the initiated could interpret, combining Shinto, Buddhist, and outlawed mountain ascetic symbolism. Historians still debate whether these secret plates existed or if they were later embellishments by travelers fascinated with Japan's mystic undercurrents. With a final nod, the retainer folds the ofuda thrice and slips it into a small lacquered omamori pouch. He ties the pouch to his cuirass's inner lining close to his heart to ward off harm in the heat of combat. A low chant rises, Kami no tate watashi o mamore. Shield of the spirits, protect me. This invocation, mainstream among battlefield bound troops, echoed across war camps until the Tokugawa peace suppressed overt ritual warfare. Beside him, another samurai uncovers a small wooden box lined with netsuki like charms, miniature carvings of tigers, dragons, and tortoises, each symbolizing courage, ferocity, or longevity. He selects a tiny ivory turtle, nodding with satisfaction. Legend holds that in one famed siege, a general's turtle charm was mortally struck, yet bounced harmlessly off his cuirass, earning him the moniker Iron Turtle. Whether fact or fable, this story encouraged widespread use of animal talismans in later eras, though scholars argue its authenticity given the turtle's soft shell. Now comes the ritual of wind charms. Slender strips of bamboo inscribed with prayers and hung from the sewed shoulder guards. In your presence, a young warrior slides each strip into carved slits atop his gauntlets, binding the bamboo under leather straps. As they sway with every movement, the samurai believe they harness gentle breezes, winds that can carry away arrows, muffle enemy voices, or confuse scouts. Fringe texts even describe reverse wind charms tied backward to send enemy wind pressure against them, though temple logbooks from the period condemn such sorcery, urging pure-hearted devotion instead. Historians still argue whether wind charms ever saw tactical use or were discarded by purists. The final act occurs at a small raised platform, a single hand mirror framed as tiny bells. The mirror symbol of self-awareness and reflection was mainstream in courtly rites, but also adopted by warrior lodges. A samurai gazes into it, searching for spiritual blemishes before battle. The bells jingle softly as he stands rotating the mirror's angle, reflecting candlelight onto his steel mask. A fleeting gleam across his eyes in the mirror is believed to reveal inner turmoil. The absence of tremor promises composure under fire. Yet a curious footnote in a 17th century shrine ledger suggests some mirrors were double-backed to reveal hidden scrawlings on the reverse secret prayers for desperate times. Whether any samurai truly used such mirror reversals, or if they were temple rumors, remains a topic of scholarly debate. As you move to the chamber's threshold, the samurai bow to the shrine's wooden effigy, murmuring final supplications. Kami Buddhas, my ancestors, stand with me. The air is thick with incense smoke, an unspoken resolve. You step into the courtyard, heart resonating with the chamber's quiet power. Each talisman, charm and ofuda, is a silent sentinel, blessing flesh and spirit, forging an unseen armor of faith around the warrior's soul. Because for the samurai to carry a talisman was not superstition, but a solemn pact that in the din of battle, an invisible host of spirits marched with them, each charm a prayer etched in paper wood or metal, shielding them from harm's edge. You leave the tranquil hush of the talisman chamber and follow a lantern lit path toward the rear courtyard, where a simple but sacred Mikoshi shrine carriage occupies prime position. Thick ropes of fresh Shimenawa festoon its ebony lacquered beams, and clusters of zigzag shide papers flutter like moth wings in the cool pre dawn air. Priests in crisp white hakama and black eboshi caps stand at attention around the portable shrine, their faces serene beneath the soft glow of suspended lanterns. In this dim courtyard, where the scent of incense coils mingles with dew, damp wood, you sense the threshold between mortal world and kami realm. Here, amid the hushed chant of Narito and the hush of ceremonial bells, another solemn rite unfolds, because now it is time for blessing by Shinto priests. From the earliest Heian era campaigns, Japanese military leaders understood that spiritual favor was as vital as steel. Mainstream chronicles confirm that daimyo routinely invited Kannushi Shinto priests to perform harai purification rituals and kenzan divine admonitions before marching armies to war. Tonight you witness that ancient practice rekindled. The head priest steps forward, lifting his Harigushi wand, its multitude of white paper streamers swirling like feathers in his steady hand. With slow, deliberate sweeps through the ranks of samurai, he disperses an invisible cleansing. The air seems to shimmer as each streamer brushes cuirass and helmet. As he moves, his deep chant fills the courtyard. Purify these bodies. Cleanse their swords of doubt. Let no malevolent spirit shadow their path. This chant, drawn from codified Shinto liturgy, is mainstream in battlefield rites seeking to expel impurities, both visible and unseen. Yet within dusty temple diaries lies a fringe footnote. Some provincial priests supposedly anointed the wand's tip with rare sandalwood oil, believing its sweet fragrance lured benevolent kami more readily. Historians still argue whether sandalwood's high cost restricted such practice to elite campaigns, or if it remained a romantic embellishment added by later observers longing for exotic detail. Once the purifying sweeps conclude, you watch the priests arrange offerings on a low non-diamond table beside the Mikoshi. Bowls of freshly harvested rice, gleaming white, under lantern glow sit alongside small plates of salted fish, its silver flesh catching firelight. A lacquered sake cup brims with clear rice wine, its surface reflecting the flicker of candles. In mainstream Shinto ritual, these three elements, grain seafood and sake, embody earth sea and spirit, forming a triad of communion between humans and gods. One by one, samurai kneel before the shrine. Each takes the offering cups in turn, a heaped pinch of rice pressed to lips in silent thanks, then a sip of sake in a rite known as naorai, sharing sustenance with the kami. In myriad war camps, naorai symbolized unity. Samurai tasted the divine essence for courage, yet the act also reinforced communal bonds. Not all historians agree on the prevalence of naorai on campaign, with some disputing whether alcohol was consumed widely or reserved for officers. Some macrobiotic codices even denounce naorai for dulling senses, evidence that the practice was occasionally contested. Next, the second priest selects a sturdy sakaki branch, its glossy green leaves revered as a living conduit for kami energy. He dips its tip into a bowl of spring water brought from a nearby sacred stream. Water is mainstream as the ultimate purifying element in Shinto, and this ceremonial sprinkling, Misogi by proxy, refreshes both warriors and the shrine itself. The priest sprinkles droplets in a slow arc over each helmet and cures the sound like muted rain on stone. As the water beads on iron, samurai press a hand to their breastplates, feeling an intangible reassurance. One footnote in a 16th century temple ledger suggests certain feudal lords added gold dust to the water, believing its shimmer attracted protective spirits, though scholars still debate if this glittering custom ever truly took root. With purification complete, the timing shifts to the pressing of ancestral bonds. A small lacquered box of Ofuda paper talismans, inscribed with protective invocations, is opened. The head priest carefully places an Ofuda inside each cuirass's breast pocket, ensuring the words of the kami accompany every swing of the blade. These Ofuda, mainstream in shrine rituals, serve as portable blessings. Yet a curious codex entry hints some warlords preferred small wooden votive tablets carved with clan crests as more durable war charms. Historians still argue whether wooden ima tablets or paper ofuda were more common in martial settings. As final flourish, the priest picks up a slender Kagura Suzu bell. Its dozen small bells dangle like captured fireflies. He raises it overhead, ringing 3 crisp peals. The clear crystalline sound resonates off courtyard walls as though calling the kami to stand among the samurai. In mainstream practice, the 3 rings echo the cosmic triad earth, water, sky. But a fringe anecdote from Borderland Outposts describes a 4-ring variant said to summon mountain spirits uniquely adept at guerrilla warfare. Whether that extra toll was ever sanctioned by shrines or remains an illicit echo in folklore is still debated. After the bell's final note drifts away, the head priest bows deeply, chanting a short closing prayer of gratitude. We thank you, Kami, for your watchful grace. Guide these hearts to valor and followers of honor. Samurai rise, their faces lit by candle glow, eyes bright with solemn purpose. They bow once more to the Mikoshi, as if physically inclining to the invisible presence. With that, the portable shrine is lifted atop sturdy poles carried by auxiliary retainers, an honor reserved strictly for this moment of consecration. The Mikoshi sways gently, its shied ribbons brushing lantern light, symbolizing the march of the divine host beside the warriors. You step back, heart resonating with the reverent inner energy that has suffused the courtyard. In the blend of cascading wand sweeps, shared sake sakaki water, protective talismans, and crystalline bells, the samurai have enacted a sequence of sacred rites. Their bodies are cleansed, armor, sanctified blades, empowered spirits aligned. Because for the samurai, a blessing by Shinto priests was more than ceremony, it was a fusion of faith and duty, a transformative passage that turned mere soldiers into divine instruments of honor and valor. In that dawn-lit courtyard, you witness the forging of unseen armor, spiritual protections that would carry each warrior safely through the heat and fury of war. As the final drips of the dawn ceremony fade into memory, the samurai are led to a long, low hall where lanterns glow softly over wooden tables laden with bowls and platters. This is the Ikari Goya, the war feast pavilion, where the last meal before battle balances sustenance symbolism and the forging of fellowship. Here, amid the mingled scents of roasting fish, steamed rice, and simmered greens, another vital ritual unfolds. Because now it is time for final feasts and last night before battle meals. For samurai, the day before battle was a sacred threshold, and their final meal, called yakusai, the warding off ceremony, was designed to nourish both body and spirit. Mainstream sources record that war feasts across the Sengoku period commonly featured spiced lotus root to symbolically link to purity, steamed rice from the best harvest to ensure prosperity, and grilled ayu sweetfish to invoke agility. Bowls of miso soup with wakame seaweed provided warmth, while small wooden cups of rice wine sake offered a quiet emboldening. You enter the hall as a retainer invites you to kneel upon a woven tatami mat at the communal table. The head chef, a veteran of dozens of campaigns, presents the first dish, a lacquered bowl of kurumazasa rice mixed with bamboo shoots and chestnuts. He explains softly, chestnuts symbolize the firm heart needed when arrows fly. This mainstream symbolism resonates among the samurai, reminding them that even in echoing volleys, a resolute spirit must not crack. Beside the rice sits a platter of shioyaki ayu, the slender sweet fish skewered and grilled over charcoal until its skin crackles. The fish's delicate flesh is eaten whole, a reminder that in battle one must be complete and unwavering. A fringe anecdote stirring in local cooks' scrolls suggests some chefs inserted tiny red pepper seeds into the fish's abdomen to give warriors a fiery bite, believing it would fire their courage. Historians still debate whether this pepperfish was ever served or dismissed as hyperbole by concerned medics. The next dish, Nemono, features root vegetables and chunks of soft tofu stewed in dashi broth. A young samurai dips a piece of lotus root slice, its wheel like holes clearly visible, into the miso broth. He murmurs to his neighbor, "May my resolve hold firm, despite any holes in fate." Lotus Root's mainstream representation of purity and vision into the future echoes in every bite. On a separate tray lies karasumi, salted mullet roe, pressed into discs and thinly sliced, a highly prized delicacy. Only wealthier clans could afford karasumi, and its inclusion underscores both status and the belief that carefully curated flavors sharpen the senses. Yet a curious footnote in a merchant's ledger claims that smaller armies substituted dried river snails pressed into rice flour cakes to emulate karasumi's briny richness, though this practice, if it occurred, was whispered of as a wartime improvised delicacy more than a culinary tradition. As the mains conclude, the chef presents Hoshiume dried plums. Their puckered tartness, mainstream lore, held warded off battle fatigue and nausea, ensuring warriors face the fray with clear stomachs and alert minds. Some regional records speak of adding a single fresh yumi blossom atop each plum to represent fleeting beauty in the face of mortality, a poignant twist that scholars still debate as either symbolic flourish or actual practice. Throughout the feast, small cups of warm sake are passed in silent rotation. Each sip is deliberate and hushed, never rushed. This sake drinking part of Naorai cements bonds. No warrior drinks alone, and no one speaks a harsh word. Historians note that some campaign diaries mention a bitter sake brewed with ginger and pepper to restore galled throats from long shouts of command. But whether that spicy variety was widespread or confined to northern provinces remains contested. Between courses, the clan's banner bearer steps forward with a tachi sword, its shiny curve reflecting lantern light. He holds it aloft, then dips the Suba guard into the shared sake, offering a symbolic sip before returning the blade to its scabbard. This mainstream rite acknowledged the sword's place at the table, both tool of survival and symbol of honor. A fringe tale from coastal forts tells of some retainers smuggling in a second hidden blade to double down on fate, but most scholars dismiss such tales as playful myth rather than recorded custom. As the final morsels are consumed, thin slices of Mukago yam bulb roasted with soy glaze, silence wraps the hall. No loud toasts punctuate this last meal. Even shared laughter is tempered, for the coming dawn may ring with war horns. A hush falls heavy as dawn, and the clan's Kuroshi banner officer raises a small bronze bell. Its once only peal signals the feast's end and the transition from sustenance to vigilance. Each samurai bows to the chef, the retainers, and to one another, eyes meeting in affirmation. Then they rise carefully, brushing rice grains from their hakama, folding napkins with grace. The last act is personal. Each warrior steps to a small basin of water at the pavilion door, rinses their hands, and murmurs a final prayer to the battlefield kami, taking the purity of the feast into their souls. You step back filled with warmth from broth and fellowship, yet tempered by the knowledge of what lies ahead. In this final feast, every rice grain, every sip of sake, every silent gesture, samurai embraced mortality, prepared for sacrifice, and fortified their unity. In the quiet of that night, before blades sang and banners flew, they fed not just their bodies, but their shared spirit, forging a silent covenant that would carry them through the storm of battle. Because for the samurai, the last meal was more than food, it was a living prayer, an unspoken vow that as dawn broke and war called, they would stand as one, hearts nourished by ritual minds, sharpened by symbolism, and bodies ready to face fate with open eyes and steady hands. The lingering warmth of the pre-battle feast follows you out into the courtyard as dawn's first pale light filters through the pines. Long rows of samurai stand, shoulder to shoulder, beside flickering braziers, their breath misting in the cool air. In the hush before battle, another ritual stirs the silent ranks, because now it is time for chanting, battle cries, and war songs. For samurai, the kiai fierce battle shout was as crucial as steel. Mainstream war manuals from the Warring States era emphasize that coordinated shouts unified troops, startled enemies, and focused inner strength. You step into the field as a veteran warrior, his chest shield glinting with clan crests, draws his nadachi in a single fluid motion, raising his voice in a clear, resonant tone. He delivers the first ya, a cry intended to steal his comrades' hearts and sow trepidation among foes. Behind him, the chorus of voices erupts in a rolling wave of A. Katsu, yes. Victory echoing against stone walls and forest ridges. Each shout is timed to an invisible drumbeat, the collective roar forging a shared pulse. Yet temple diaries note that in smaller skirmishes, some rogue bands adopted a whispered suko, a softer, eerie echo meant to unsettle enemies by hinting at unseen numbers. Historians still debate whether this whisper kiai ever saw widespread use or remained an isolated superstition documented by startled villagers. As the initial kiai tapers, the samurai break into war songs called busho bushi poetic chants, recounting legendary victories and ancestral glories. A bard-like retainer steps forward with a biwa, its taut strings stuttering under skilled thumb. He begins a mournful melody, bearing dawn's crimson light. We march on fields of fate, steel and spirit entwined, our names carved by blade and breath. The melody swells as drummers join in taiko drums of varying sizes, their deep tones trembling in chests and earth alike. Mainstream chronicles record that Busho Bushi varied by region. Some clans favored slow, dirge-like refrains to steel resolve. Others preferred fast driving rhythms to intoxicate the senses with fervor. Yet a fringe episode in a coastal fortress journal speaks of a retainer using a conch shell trumpet to accompany Busho Bushi, believing its ancient marine echo summoned the power of sea spirits. Scholars still argue whether conch trumpets were ritual curiosities or actual battlefield instruments. You feel the war song's cadence ripple through your veins, a pulse that anesthetizes fear and binds you to your fellows. Lines are shouted in unison, with honor as our anchor. We stand as one in flame. Though shadows close around us, our kiai shall crown the brave. Each stanza ends with a unified a raspy double kiai that cracks the dawn's stillness. The effect is palpable. Individual voices merge into a single living thunder, as if some colossal spirit speaks through mortal throats. Between verses, a handful of archers step forward to chant their own Yumi Bushi war song, a slower measured chant timed to the knocking of arrows and the creak of bows. Feathered flight in moonlit gloom, find the crack within the sky, silent arcs that seal men's doom, let each shaft's keen whisper fly. This specialized chant is mainstream among Ashigaru foot soldiers and bow. Ashigaru units trained in synchronous volley fire. Yet a curious scroll from a mountain clan claims they once used eagle cries mimicked by mouths or horn to signal arrow release. Historians still debate whether this imitative technique was effective or simply a romantic legend preserved by wandering minstrels. As the final drumbeat falls, the war songs end and silence grips the field. Each warrior stands motionless, hearts racing, breaths held in a collective calm before the storm. You sense how these coordinated chants, drums, and weapons songs did more than raise morale. They synchronized spirit and steel, turning disparate individuals into a single resonant force. From the kiai's primal roar to the elegiac Busho Bushi, from the precision of Yumi Bushi to the whispered legends of conch trumpets, samurai used song and shout not as mere noise, but as the living framework of warfare, melding artistry, ritual, and raw power into a prelude to combat. Because for the samurai battle cries and war songs were not distractions, they were the heartbeat of the army, the voice of history and honor, and the unseen hand that guided every blade stroke amid chaos. In those chants lay the strength to face dawn's first clash without faltering. The thunder of mock battle fades behind you as you step into the gray glow of dawn's aftermath. The field once alive with drums and cries now lies littered with spent arrows and scattered footprints. The scent of smoldering braziers still lingering in the air. Yet amid this quiet aftermath, another vital ritual waits to restore order and honor, because now it is time for rise before retreat rituals. For samurai, every engagement victorious or costly demanded careful rites to cleanse mind, body, and armor of battle's impurities. Mainstream war chronicles describe how commanders organized Yomagai no Ji, the revival ceremony, at first light after skirmishes. You follow a line of weary warriors back to the same pavilion where they once gleaned divine favor before battle. Here, under the watchful eyes of attendants, they will enact the rites of renewal and departure. First, each samurai kneels beside his helmet, now dented or dust smeared from combat. With deliberate reverence, he uses a soft linen cloth and a few drops of camellia oil to buff away soot and blood stains, restoring the lacquered surface to its former sheen. This meticulous polishing is more than maintenance. It is a mainstream practice born of Bushidō's insistence that a warrior care for his arms as extensions of honor. Each stroke of the cloth becomes a meditative act, washing away the adrenaline and grief that might cling like rust. A fringe anecdote survives in a coastal daimyo's diary, a tale that some retainer applied sake instead of oil, believing its purity would better sanctify the helmet. But temple purification manuals sharply criticized such spiritual shortcuts. Historians still argue whether sake polishing ever gained traction or remained a whispered oddity among flamboyant warriors. Once helmets gleam, the samurai step forward and file to a low trough of clear spring water, the same water once used for early rituals. Here, they perform kakizen, the spirit-washing cupping water in both hands and splashing it across their faces and chest plates. The act is accompanied by the soft chant, Shin o Mokusu, we return spirit to purity, a mainstream invocation found in battle scrolls of Kai province. This cleansing drifts away nightmares of last night's clash and readies hearts for whatever comes next: pursuit, fortification, or honorable return. Next, weapons come under scrutiny. Messengers bring wooden racks where blades lie stacked. One by one, samurai draw their tanto or wakizashi, tapping it twice on the rack to dislodge detritus, then wiping the blade with a piece of silk. The ritual is mainstream swords must be purified before leaving the battlefield, lest lingering malice cling to the steel. A curious footnote in a monk's battlefield account describes a warrior who used a lotus petal to wipe his blade, believing that every trace of flower essence warded off death's shadow. Scholars still debate if lotus polishing ever existed or if it was symbolic allegory penned by poetic scribes. Armor plates are then loosened, studs, checked straps retightened. Beneath a low canopy, each samurai removes his do, exposing the simple kimono beneath. Attendants pass bowls of warm water, infused with yomogi mugwort, leaves an herb mainstream in purification baths for its antiseptic qualities. Immersed up to their waists, warriors soak for several minutes, letting herb-scented steam unbind muscle knots and soothe sunburned skin. This communal bath kusuri no yu served both healing and bonding purposes, reinforcing unity after the chaos of conflict. In some clans, a fringe custom added handfuls of dried safflower petals to the bath for their brilliant red hue, symbolizing both the bloodshed endured and the promise of renewal. Yet shogunate edicts later banned flower-dyed waters, deeming them overly extravagant in times of war. Historians still debate whether safflower baths truly flourished or were but a fleeting courtly fashion among hedonistic lords. After the bath, samurai donned fresh under armor and crisp hakama. They step lightly onto platforms where attendants brush their arms and shoulders with sprigs of sakaki, invoking final purification. Each brushstroke is accompanied by a whispered prayer. May our hearts remain pure, even in triumph. The final rite is the farewell prayer at the Mikoshi shrine. The priests now, without full ceremonial robes, stand before the portable altar. Samurai kneel and offer a pinch of rice, a sip of residual sake, and a final bow. The head priest rings the Kagura Suzu bell once clear and haunting, signaling the closure of sacred protections. With that, banners are rolled. The shrine is lifted from its stand and carried away, and the field falls silent. Warriors load horses, shoulder pack frames, and prepare for the next march, whether toward further conquest or homeward retreat. Their bodies are cleansed, arms purified, hearts renewed, because for the samurai rising after battle was not mere cleanup, it was a sacred passage from death's brink back to life's purpose. In those first dawn rituals, they shed the ghost of combat and reclaimed their humanity, fortified by rites that ensured honor remained sharper than any blade. The dawn mist clings to the quiet battlefield as you step aside from the samurai's final rites. The lingering scent of mugwort and purified steel drifts on the cool air. Around you, lanterns gutter their flames, bowing toward night's lingering shadow. But in this hushed calm, a gentle peace settles over every warrior's spirit. Close your eyes and feel the smooth lacquer of a freshly polished helmet at your fingertips, the warmth of herb-infused water soothing tired muscles. Hear the soft splash of spring water and the distant echo of a single Bushidō's clear ring. Let the memory of whispered prayers, Shin-o mokusu, may our hearts remain pure, wash over you like morning light, filtering through bamboo groves. Breathe deeply, drawing in the mingled scents of pine incense and tea still clinging to robes. Recall the steady rhythm of kiai, the measured tilt of war fans, the silent flicker of lotus petals on battle worn blades. Each ritual, each movement guided a warrior from dawn's first purify to the final farewell prayer. Now release the tension of conflict, the weight of armor, the ache of fatigue. Let your heart rest in the knowledge that rituals of cleansing, chanting, honoring forge a sacred path back to peace. You are no longer in the whirl of battle, but cradled in ceremony's calm embrace. May your spirit rise gently renewed by imagined blades' clarity and sacred waters' grace. As you drift toward sleep, envision candles fading, banners rolling, and the samurai's silent determination echoing into stillness. Rest now, traveler. Your mind is a polished blade, your soul a purified shrine. Sleep deeply, knowing honor guides your dreams. Sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.